I'm going to need to put a
For
big,
sure.
like, warning, like, parental discretion on the thumbnail for this video.
To this with your children. Welcome back to Mr. Homemaker. We're going to talk about traditions when you are a family with children.
All right, so I'm just going to dive right into the deep end. What to tell your kids about Santa. I think there are basically three options. A lot of people, it seems to me that most people start off with well, of course we're going to tell our kids that Santa is real and he comes down the chimney and insert a series of things here.
Yeah. You don't want your kid to be the jerk at school that's like,
hey everybody, my mom says Santa isn't real.
Like,
I don't think that's the real reason. I think
no, it's the magic and the wonder and the
magic
beauty
and
of
the
Christmas.
wonder and the beauty. Yes. Okay, so as you can tell, Kristen is in favor of Santa.
Look, there are very few things in life that are so magical and pure and beautiful for your children than this belief in Santa.
Yeah.
I'm putting my finger on the scale right now.
Yeah.
Like, what I'm trying to do is like fit in all of the special experiences while they still believe. So like last year we did one Polar Express. This year we're going to do a different Polar Express. And next year we're going to go to Santa's Village.
And then, so that's like sort of one end of the possible spectrum, one choice one could make. The opposite end. The opposite end of the spectrum is...
We call this the Scrooge end of the spectrum.
Is I want my children to know that I'm not going to be dishonest with them. Like, I don't want them to ever feel like I tricked them. Mm-hmm. And so my priority is on, I want to be honest with my kids. Right. And I don't want them to resent me duping them. So yeah, creating magic for children or giving them a sense of like security in your trustworthiness, I think are the two motivating factors on the two ends of the spectrum. Right. There is an interesting middle ground that I hadn't previously just like heard. Doing all the Santa things, but doing it not as a like continually setting aside your child's like doubts or like skepticism. Right. But and being like, no, like let me come up with a more elaborate reason that it is true to like overcome your like figuring out that that doesn't make sense kind of thing. But there's no need to do that in order to create the magic. You can create the magic by it being this is a make-believe thing we play. Like, this is like, you play games with your kids where you like make-believe, you like play characters, you play dress up, you like, and like you say like, this is like, it's a fun game. It's a fun make-believe game. Yeah. But I'm not trying to actually like convince you to believe in a thing that over your objections that it can't be real. Yeah. So just a third option that I had recently discovered was like, oh, that's really interesting. But like, we're pretending this is for fun.
So like, if you go to Disney World, are you telling your kids like, there's a man inside the Mickey Mouse costume? There isn't. Mickey Mouses are nothing. I worked there and I can tell you.
If you're finding this video helpful, please click the like button below so it can spread to other couples who will also benefit from this advice. So for what it's worth, I did do a little research in our book, Yardsticks, Child and Adolescent Development from 4 to 14. So in this book, I was trying to look for like all the things that could tie into Santa in particular. And you might be interested to know that being 8 years old, that is the age at which you have the maximum possible joy that you derive from positive surprises. Okay. But it's also the point at which you begin to accelerate your like logical problem solving.
A year away.
So yeah, so there might be like an off ramp that has to happen at or about 8 years old of like, maybe it's a matter of shifting gears from, you know, maybe the solution here is 5 and under, full blown like Santa is real. Right. 5 to 8 is like, hey, this is like a fun thing. And then like once your kid's like 9 or 10, you're gonna be like, you gotta get this idea out of your head. You're gonna start to be like picked on at school for being the 10-year-old who's like trying to explain to everybody this elaborate lie your mother told to you about that makes sense of all of the Santa Clauses in town.
I'm not ready for that.
That's like 3 years from now. So I'm saying it could be an all of the above approach. It's just It's a time phase thing based on developmental milestones.
This is like one of those things like tied so close to my heart that I just can't. I'm like, this is the way we do it.
You're like until 3 years ago, I still thought Santa was real.
I still think you might be. This particular issue was one of those things that was not just an expectation for me, but this was like a huge blind spot. Yeah. When we had this conversation and I felt like betrayed of like, you think we should consider telling our children all under the age of 7
Yeah.
that Santa is not real because
I wasn't saying we should proactively tell them that he's not real. I was saying if they point out like, oh, that doesn't make sense or that can't be, like, yeah, you're right. You got us. Not real.
So I will say that I think
found the clues.
Point is well taken of like having to double down and just continue into this thing. Last year, our town is like overly Christmased. And so I think there were
right.
5 Santas.
Every 2 blocks there was another Santa.
Right. And so we were walking down the street and my
True
daughter,
story.
6 years old, was like, that Santa looked different than the Santa downtown that we just took a picture with. And then she was like, "Hey, sounds different. That doesn't sound like Santa." And I was like, and so we just got deep in the lie hole of like.
But especially when I'm not around, I feel like you like quickly like the first thing that comes to mind, which might not be the most plausible or simplest lie.
Right.
It could be super
I'm a
elaborate.
terrible liar. And so I just go with it, and then I've got to catalog what I said.
You don't have to worry about that.
Right.
Because you just say like, hey, we're just having fun.
Right.
Don't think too hard about it. It's just a game.
I don't like that either.
We're not 100% on the same page about this.
Right.
But I would encourage couples to think critically about different developmental milestones that their kids are going to be in and like which traditions are going to matter to you and your children at different times, because it's not going to be always the same. And like you don't need to have like some things in place. Your 3-year-old is not going to appreciate that you did that. Mm-hmm. But when they're 7 or 10, they might.
Right. A really important piece to end on, right, is figuring out how you navigate these things in a way that doesn't disrespect the way other families do things. It's our responsibility, right, to let our children know to be cognizant of others and that there are different families do things different ways, and that there's not, because that's like the last thing I want is for our children to be like, well, like Elf on the Shelf isn't real. Like, well, for some families they want them to feel that way, and you've got to be respectful of that. So a friend of mine told me for the first time, and she told her daughter, we didn't check that box. And I said, what does that mean? She said, well, we told our daughter that when you and your husband get married, you get a list. And you check the box of the things that your family participates in, and then there are other things that you can only check so many. So we don't check the leprechaun box, but we do check the Cinco de Mayo box because they happen to be Spanish. Like, so
that's really interesting. This is the first time hearing it. That's really interesting. Yeah.
So I mean, maybe there's a little lie in there, but it is also like a way.
Well, no, that's actually not a lie. I mean, it's like sort of an artificial representation of like, we've made some priorities around what we're going to spend our time on. And like, we can't do all of the things. I think that's fair to acknowledge. There's a lot of things out there and we're not going to do it well.
Right. Or like, why? Yeah. So Christmas versus Hanukkah or whatever that may be.
Well, and again, like Elf on the Shelf, like at some point we're going to have to, and we should come up with a lie in advance so that you don't come up with a bad one. But like, we have to explain to our kid, like, yeah, I know that your friends are telling you that, like, if you don't have an elf in your house, then, like, Santa isn't paying attention. Like, no, that's not, they're mistaken. Join us where we do our most important things for young couples to keep in mind so that their holiday season can be one of happiness and growing together and not being at odds and, like, growing apart. All right, so see you in the next video.